Today we're going to be going over getting started step by step with Ansible. Ansible is a tool for provisioning, configuration management, and application deployments. So, why do you need a tool for this? The common workflow historically is we've had to remote into each server and make changes manually, then update our application by hand. This wasn't too difficult when you only had a handful of servers to manage, but with today's environments, you need products that handle configuration, management, and deployments on a much larger and more repeatable scale. Ansible is one of those tools. If we want to learn about Ansible and its power, we have to start with one of its parents. That's SSH. And how we can manually remote into a system and make one-off changes. I have a few cloud servers running for us to mess with. They have the required firewalls and ports open. I've already set up some user accounts on them. We're going to SSH into one of those and get its hostname. I can SSH in with an SSH command. Just SSH, then my username, Kevin, and then the IP of the host that we want to SSH into, which is going to be this, and I can just SSH. And I'm going to get the username by running uname -n, or I guess the host name, not its username. And we see it's Ubuntu 1. Well, for demonstration, I can actually condense this down. I can SSH, just like we did before. I can paste in the IP address that I want to hit, and then I can actually just run my command right next to it. And then we're going to get back the host name. Now, what if we need to do this for 50 servers, or even 1,000? What happens when the configuration is more than just getting the host name? That's where Ansible comes in. It enables a much better workflow, besides me just having to build a whole bunch of scripts around SSH. So let's start actually doing some Ansible. So first I can make sure that I have Ansible installed with Ansible -- version, and I should have 2.7. I do, 2.710. You can install Ansible with pip install Ansible. If you don't have pip installed, or if you're having issues with that, check Ansible's website. They have, clear install directions there. So we can start building our Ansible command with Ansible. -I, we can start specifying our host that we would like to connect to. Ansible expects a list here. We can trick it by having a trailing comma if we're only passing in one host. Now we can specify a module we want to run against this. We're just going to run with the ping module with -m. And then I'm going to need a user, just like SSH, and I'm going to use the username I used above, my name. And then Ansible expects a specific host group. Since we're working with only one host right now, I can just put all right here. We'll explain more in a bit what this actually means. So if we run this, we can see that we got a successful ping from the server, and it returned Pong. Well, we can do more than just ping the server. Just like our SSH command above, we can get the hostname back. So instead of ping here, we can change this to a shell module. In -a, I'm kind of skimming over what this all is going to mean because we're going to find a better way in a second to do this. And I'm going to pass in uname, if I can spell it correctly, -n, and then I'm going to run this again. And just like that, we got our hostname back, Ubuntu -1. So I mentioned earlier that Ansible lets us work with more hosts. We can actually do that by inserting them right after the -I command. I'm going to paste in this kind of pre-populated, but as you can see, instead of just having the one host, after the comma we have two more hosts right here. And then let's run this. So as you can see, now we have an output for 3 different hosts. We have Ubuntu 1, we have a host named Debian 1, and we have a host named Ubuntu 2. So I'm hinting like 50 or 1,000 servers, not 3, and adding 50 or 1,000 servers right here on the command line won't be the most fun thing in the world. We can start by moving this list into its own file. I'm going to create a file called servers.yaml, and then I'm going to, actually, we should have it open right over here, and here's our file. I'm going to take this list of host names, and I'm going to add them to servers.yaml, and I'm going to split them up on the comma. I may move these commas. I'm gonna take these Ubuntu hosts and put them in their own group called web servers with inside these brackets like this. And then I'm also going to take this Debian server, as we can see over here, this 35 IP that starts with 35 is a Debian one. I'm going to create a group called DB. Now we can run our new command with Ansible -I. Instead of passing in the list, we can pass in our file. Username, just like before. Message, let's ping again. And then we also need to say all. So, as you can see, just like before, we got ping response, but this time back from 3 different hosts, the ones we specified in the servers.yaml. Let's re-explore this all. Now, before, when we were only passing in hosts on the command line, we were just passing in the ones we wanted to run Ansible against. But now that we've specified different groups for our servers to be in, we can actually use those groups in the place of all. So with this same command, if I say db here, I only get the response from the Debian 1 host. Okay, now that we've set up our hosts and groups, let's do some actual configuration. Let's update apt-get on all of our hosts. So if I come back to this command, I'm going to change this web servers back to all, and then I'm going to change this uname to apt-get update. And then I'm going to run this. Okay, well, we got a failure on all 3 of our hosts. And the failure is permission denied. This is because we need to escalate the privileges for running apt-get update. So we could just add sudo right into this command. But Ansible's actually thought of this. So we can run it with the flag. Ooh. We can run this command again. I'm actually going to clear my screen. We can run this with a -b, and the -b stands for become. Now that we have this output, as you can see, it's a whole bunch of stuff. It's not very organized. If we wanted to add more stuff, this command's once again getting kind of long, and there's actually a better way to do this. So just like we split off the hosts into its own file, we can split off all the configuration steps we want to take into its own file called the playbook. So let's do that. I'm going to create a playbook called deploy.yaml. So I'm going to clear my screen. So in deploy.yaml, we can actually start taking some of the items we had in this command and putting them into deploy.yaml. So first, we can start with this host group, all. We can add that to this playbook with -hosts, comma, all. And then we can take this become flag, this -b, and we can add that to our file as well with become, comma, yes. So now that we are in our playbook, we're no longer going to be passing the execution one by one. We're going to have to specify some tasks. So we can specify some tasks first by saying tasks. In Ansible, tasks are just different blocks of execution. There are a lot of different things you can do with these tasks, but we're going to start by running apt-get like we did before. When we ran this in the one-off command, we were just running in the shell command, but Ansible has a built-in module for apt itself and a lot of other basic functions. That's what we're going to want to use here. So I'm going to create a task. So in the task block, I'm going to give it a name. We don't have to do this, but it's nice to keep things clean with apt. If I can spell out, get install Python pip. And then I need to specify the apt module. And then I'm going to give the package that we want to install with name equals Python pip. So I'm going to save this file. And then now if we come back to the command line, we actually no longer are going to use the Ansible command. We're actually now graduating to the Ansible playbook command that now takes the playbook that we just created as the main argument. We can still pass in the inventory the same way we've done before, and it's going to be our servers file. And then we're also going to pass in a user for SSH, which is going to be my username. So let's run this. Okay, well, I messed up this block of code over here. I have to indent this one more, and then we're going to actually run it this time. So as you can see, there's a little bit different output this time. It's showing us step-by-step what's going, and now we're at the apt-get install python pip. Cool. We've now run our deploy playbook. What happens if we run this again? So interesting. The results are actually a little bit different here. When we ran this first time, the apt-get install python pip, the task that we defined over here in our playbook, said changed for each of our hosts. But then when we ran it a second time, it says okay for each of our hosts. This is because correctly written Ansible is idempotent. Idempotency means that this playbook can be applied multiple times and it won't change the results. Ansible displays this by telling us nothing changed the next time it ran. So when it said changed up here, it meant that it installed the required packages. But when it says okay, it didn't even have to install them. They were already correctly installed before, so it just passes right over it. So I'm going to clear the screen again. And installing one thing isn't super useful. We can actually install more than one thing, but we can pass in Jinja 2 templating here, and we can add Jinja 2 templating right to this playbook, and I'm going to add a key with the name item. And then we can populate this item Jinja 2 template with a block of code called with items. And then I'm going to add the packages that I would like to install. So we still want to have pip, and then we're also going to install git core. So this is actually going to loop through each of these tasks and apply them each separately within the same block of code. Now that this is apt-get install python pip probably doesn't make sense anymore. We can just say packages. Now if we run this, so as you can see, we actually successfully ran. We got the changes on each host, but we have all this pink deprecation warning. What this is saying is invoking apt. It doesn't like looping over items with items. This is kind of the old way of doing it. I just wanted to show you so you had a point of reference, because you're probably going to see this a lot in different playbooks. And it still does work, and Jinja 2 templating is used plenty of other places in Ansible. The correct new way to do this is actually to take this apt module, and then we can split off name like this, and then remove this whole item block. And then we can add our packages right below the name like this. And now this is going to loop through correctly in each name, and it's not going to give us a deprecation warning. While we're at it, I'm also going to add another full stack of code for a pip module that I'm copying and pasting in. This pip module, just like the app module above, is going to be installing requests in Boto 3. Let's run all this together. So now you can see we got the green for the apt-get install packages, because we've already run this right above. And then now we have some change for pip packages, and we should be good. We're now installing packages on all of our hosts. Well, we can also specify the individual web servers if we want to, let's say, install an application. I have a sample application here, which is this real-world example app that I'll link in the description below. Basically, what we're going to do is we want to git clone and check this out, and then install the requirements with requirements.txt. I'm going to copy some code into our playbook and then speak about what it does. So I'm adding a whole another section of code to our playbook. As you can see, top line, hosts, now we're only saying web servers because we only want this to happen to our web servers. Become like above. And then we have a whole new task block. We have dash name for, I'm calling this checking out real world app because I have the link to our app, and then the location we want to install the app. And then now we can install our real world app requirements, with the pip module still, but instead of passing in each requirement, we can just point at the requirements file, which will be in the location once we check this out. So now we can run all of that. Okay, cool. So it ran. And now that it ran, we can actually see that it ran everything we wanted to run against all the hosts. And then it also has this new block for just the web servers, where it's only each of the two web servers that is running these two blocks of code against. And then that's reflected in the final output. Basically, there's a difference between the two web servers and the remaining instance. I'm going to clear the screen again. Now, let's say we wanted to do some configuration for our databases still. Now, we can start by doing it the same way that we did before, but specifying the host, the DB group, which is pulling from this server's file, DB. And then we can escalate with become, and then we can write tasks, and then we can specify 100 tasks here that set up, let's say, a Postgres database. Well, someone's already done this work for us. If I come into Ansible Galaxy, which is like a public repository for Ansible roles, we can actually find a Postgres role for us to use. So I just came to the databases section, and here we go, Postgres with 77,000 downloads. And I'm going to install Postgres with this link right here, which this is going to say I already have installed, which I do. And then I can add this role right in this group with roles, just like we did with tasks. And then I'm going to specify this role, which is going to be right up here. It's this. So it's going to be username dot the name of the role. And then I'm going to save that. And while we're at it, let's make our web server an actual web server. Let's install Nginx by the same user. Just verifying I already have it installed. And then I'm going to take this, and I'm going to add this to our web servers block. And then Nginx. Now let's run all this. I'm going to clear my screen. So what this is currently doing is this is actually running our tasks that we've specified, and it's also going to each role and installing all the tasks that the role specifies. So for Nginx, that's going to be a whole bunch of configuration to set up Nginx, and for the Postgres role, it's going to be installing and setting up Postgres. As you can see, there's a lot more tasks running through. These are all ones that we didn't have to specify. Someone else in the community has done for us. Well, cool. As you can see, completed. It's run a whole bunch of tasks that we didn't have to define to set up Postgres and set up Nginx. We can do a quick sanity check by going over to our host and grabbing a web server and then hitting it on the internet. So as we can see here, Nginx is now set up. It's just the default configuration. We can still pass in some variables and get it set up working with a web application. But that's work for a different day. Let me know if you have any other questions in the comments, and I hope you all have a good day.